Hi, I'm an old guy who watches Doctor Who.
And I have for a very long time. And as I ranked the companions of the first Doctor, this is a follow-up, a ranking of the companions of the second Doctor, which, like all good rankings, is an excuse to examine them. There were 5 of them, 3 fewer than with the first Doctor, plus 1 failed companion, and 2 I'll call associates. The show had changed a great deal from its beginnings, and Patrick Troughton played a significantly different Doctor than William Hartnell had. More energetic, more trustworthy, and less human. So the boxes that a companion had fit into no longer applied. Still, there were some tendencies. The second Doctor tended to have 2 companions at a time, 1 male and 1 female, with the male being athletic, while for the female, the show reverted to teenagers, with 2 of the companions being 15-year-olds. Though they were written and played as if they were 4 or 5 years older, and their young age was ignored, and they weren't necessarily damsels in distress. So who are our 5 companions, and 3 others? The era started with Ben and Polly, portrayed by Michael Craze and Annika Wills, holdovers from the Hartnell era, where they had had 3 serials. But this TARDIS team of the second Doctor and just Ben and Polly lasted only a single serial. Producer Innes Lloyd had begun looking for possible replacements. So in the second serial, The Highlanders, he and writer/script editor Jerry Davis came up with the idea of an 18th century Scottish piper as a companion. But they were treading carefully, so they wrote Jamie McCrimmon as a one-off character, but cast Fraser Hines with a contract that gave them the option to keep him around. This way they could see if he worked out. They decided he did, boosted by Troughton, who already knew Hines. So they had to reshoot the end of the episode, now with Jamie being invited into the TARDIS instead of left behind. And he would stay a long time, the longest ever companion by a good margin, if we count by episode, or screen time, instead of years. This TARDIS team lasted most of the rest of the season, 4 additional serials, though Wills and Craze's contracts were for 5 more. But Lloyd had become disenchanted with the pair, so dismissed them early, paying them for their full allotment of episodes, but telling them not to come back. In-world, in The Faceless Ones, the TARDIS had happened to land in London on exactly the same date Ben and Polly had first joined the Doctor, so by luck they were home and went back to their normal lives. With Ben and Polly being pushed out the door, Lloyd immediately moved to add a second companion, a woman, in that same story, Samantha Briggs, played by Pauline Collins. For most people, Collins is best known for her multi-award-winning film roles and an Oscar nomination, as well as a part in Upstairs Downstairs, a show created by previous failed companion Jean Marsh. But I always knew Collins as the star of the Britcom No Honestly and Woodhouse Playhouse, both of which I was a huge fan of in the 70s. Troughton and Hines knew nothing of Lloyd's plans, but noticed an actress getting lots of lines right when Ben and Polly were leaving, and both fell head over heels for Collins, so started advocating for her to be the new companion. Everybody loved Collins. But it wasn't to be. She turned down the role, and we have ourselves a failed companion, one seldom mentioned now. But her time with Doctor Who wasn't over. She would return many years later to play Queen Victoria in the 2nd season of New Who. But Lloyd had a backup plan, a Victorian teenager named Victoria Waterfield, introduced in the next story, The Evil of the Daleks. There are varying reports on why Lloyd hired 19-year-old Deborah Watling to play 15-year-old Victoria. He may have liked her in a production of Alice, or he was struck by her beauty as a cover model for the Radio Times. She may have auditioned for the part after having failed to get the role of Polly, or Lloyd might have just hired her without an audition. Memories are inconsistent. This gave us a TARDIS team of the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria. Watling stayed for 1 year, which was her plan from the beginning. The showrunners would have liked her to stay longer, but she stuck to her plan. So Victoria chose to leave the TARDIS in the second-to-last serial of Season 5, Fury from the Deep, wanting a quieter life, and finding a couple who would give her a place to stay. As Watling had given plenty of notice, replacing her went smoothly. Zoe Heriot, played by Wendy Padbury, was introduced in the following story, The Wheel in Space. She was another teenager, but not a damsel. Instead, she was a mathematical genius who at times could outthink the Doctor, and this team would last the rest of the Second Doctor's era. Hines was the first to announce his plans to leave, pressured, he would say later, by his agent, and he regrets it. Troughton had his own plans to leave, so persuaded Hines to stick around till the end of the season, when they'd both go together. Padbury was asked to stay to be John Pertwee's companion, but she, jokingly, said she'd never be in frame since she was so short and he was so tall, so she chose to depart with the other two, leaving a blank slate for the next era. Those are the companions, but what about the associates? Those would be Colonel Alistair Lethbridge-Stewart, played by Nicholas Courtney, who first met the Doctor, and Jamie and Victoria, in The Web of Fear, and Corporal Benton, played by John Levine, who, along with the now promoted Brigadier Lethbridge-Stewart, encountered the Doctor and Jamie and Zoe in The Invasion. I don't consider either Lethbridge-Stewart or Benton companions of the Second Doctor. They're not show regulars, yet. They don't travel with him, and they have no interaction with him except for a specific event. 2 events for Lethbridge-Stewart. They're just characters he encounters, much like Rigsy is to the 12th Doctor. If they are companions, and there's some debate, it's to the 3rd Doctor, and I'll worry about them when I look at his companions. And hey, this is a good time to like this video, if you like it, and to subscribe if you want more. That would really help me. I need 100 more subscribers. How about you? So, skipping the failed companion and associates, it's time to rank the actual companions. Coming in at number 5, Ben Jackson. I covered Ben as a companion to the 1st Doctor in my previous video, where he came in toward the bottom. There were problems there with him being clearly a replacement for a replacement, and him being assigned a rigid role of He-Man, a role that no longer was pertinent. But this was a new Doctor, so the scripts could have changed things up, given him exciting new options. They didn't. With a more spry Doctor, one who famously can run, Ben had even less to do as a physically oriented companion. And he came off as even dimmer and more stubborn, doubting what every viewer at home knew to be true. The bigger problem is that he gets belligerent about it. Why the hostility?
Oh, so that's it. You've been renewed, have you?
And that defines Ben, quarrelsome for no reason. But the final nail is Jamie. This isn't a ranking of the characters' personalities, or what could have been done with them, theoretically, but how they worked with the Doctor in the situations they were placed in, which includes other companions. And Ben is essentially replaced by a superior model hero. Anything Ben could have done, Jamie could do, and the writers seem to be able to work with Jamie better. Even some of Ben's dialogue was taken from him and given to Jamie. He was the clear third wheel, with little to do, and was abrasive while doing it. But here's where that's all a lie, as is every review of Season 4 of Doctor Who. I say that's how Ben was during the 6 stories, but I'm making assumptions. Everyone is. Of the 6 serials Ben appears in, none are complete. Of 28 individual episodes, only 6 exist, with 3 serials completely gone. Sure, we have telesnap and animated reproductions, but those don't show us performances. Perhaps Michael Craze made it all work. Perhaps. Number 4. Polly. I hate to repeat myself from the previous ranking video, but the basics are still the same. Polly had everything to be one of the best companions of all time, breaking out of the restraints of previous companions, in entertaining style and amazing charisma from Annika Wills. But the scripts would let her down. So on average, I'll say she was good, but less than she should have been. Sometimes she'd be clever and fun and exciting, and sometimes the writers just didn't know what to do with a non-damsel female, so would either have her do nothing, serve the tea, or would make her a damsel for the moment. Not the last companion they'd do that to. One of the worst traits of damsels is causing the problems that they need to be saved from. So we get Polly gazing down at a villain who is obviously faking sickness and making an incredibly silly request, to which she replies,
I think you should. He does look very ill.
Yeah, so she ends up kidnapped and does nothing to help her situation. And she got captured a lot. Of course, everyone in Classic Who got captured at some point, but there are limits. When she was allowed to take action and not scream, then she came to life. You can really see her at her best blackmailing a British officer in the Highlanders. Well, you can't see, since that's missing. Sigh. Just like with Ben, more of her episodes are gone than exist, and I have more faith that her performance, that we can't see, would have elevated the material. But from what we can actually see, well, as the season went on, she got less and less to do. Number 3. Victoria Waterfield. And this is where I vary from general Who fandom, that I find undervalues Victoria. And you might think number 3 isn't that high, but I place number 3 of the second Doctor's companions higher than the number 1 companion of 6 other Doctors. She is generally classified as a damsel, but if so, she's the best damsel. Character development does wonders. She isn't just fulfilling a role. Unlike damsels such as Susan or Mel, it's her background, character, and experiences that make her timid and frightened of this world she's been thrust into, not just because the show wanted a female to rescue. She's a Victorian teen, orphaned when her father, who she was close to, was murdered by a Dalek. She watched as everyone she cared about died, and was taken in by the Doctor because she had nowhere else to go, and he felt a certain amount of responsibility for her situation. Yes, Victoria screamed and was often anxious, but she wasn't a floor mat. Opponents in the show respond to her as some of fandom does, as a weak and meek, useless girl, and Victoria understood that and used it against them. She tricks them. She's tricksy, like the Doctor, which makes them a fine team. Yes, she's scared, but she has courage because she fights through her fear. She attacks a Cyberman and an Ice Warrior, and she uses a gun. The Brigadier doesn't seem so special now. And she really works with this TARDIS team. The second Doctor is a more mercurial figure, and his care around Victoria makes him more likable. And the brother-sister vibes between her and Jamie make Jamie more likable. His old-school gallantry could seem out of place, but his protectiveness of Victoria is fitting, and instead makes him noble. And this is the most family-like the TARDIS has ever been, which is odd since we've had actual family there before. This TARDIS team of the Doctor, Jamie, and Victoria is my favorite up to this point, and will rarely be surpassed. And she has a good exit, extremely emotional. She chooses to go, though cares greatly for the Doctor and Jamie. Her time in the TARDIS was more trauma on top of trauma, so she needed a little peace. And noting how poorly the Doctor leaving Susan was, here, the Doctor sticks around to make sure that this is the best outcome for her. Number 2. Zoe Heriot. Something new and different is generally a good thing for a show, and Zoe was that, an extremely capable companion. Sure, Ian was able to do most everything, but it didn't make sense that he could. It does for Zoe, who is conceived of as an equal to the Doctor in many ways, or, as she puts it,
the Doctor's almost as clever as I am.
And as a switch from Victoria, she's bubbly and self-assured, forever curious. She's the sort of companion you can imagine spinning off into her own adventure show. I've heard her described as a sexy little Spock, and that does seem accurate, if Spock was nicer. She's a mathematical genius who's undergone advanced education techniques, has a photographic memory, and is an expert on psychology. But her emotional development was stunted, which is why she wanted to run off in the TARDIS, to get away from her rigid environment and learn about the universe and how to feel. As for being little, she's tiny, reported to be 5 foot even, though Padbury has at times claimed to be shorter. And sexy, this shot from the Mind Robbers became a viral meme, and her butt has fan pages. And she fits so well into this TARDIS team. I said the team of the second Doctor, Jamie and Victoria, was seldom surpassed. Seldom, but rapidly, by this team. And never again from a team of 2 or more companions. This is the 3-person team. And one of the funniest. The group lends itself to humor, with friendly competition and sarcasm abounding. While I love her time in the TARDIS, her growth, and her interactions with the Doctor and Jamie, I'm not fond of her departure. She has her memories stripped away and has returned to the point in time when she first met the Doctor. It took them nearly 50 years to show how tragic that is, with Donna Noble. And like Donna, Zoe was better for having traveled. And number 1, Jamie McCrimmon. Here I'm predictable, as Jamie is generally taken as the best of the second Doctor's companions, and one of the best of all time, and I'm fully on board with that. He shows that not only can a non-modern, in the show's frame of reference, companion work, but that it's a great idea. His lack of knowledge of things the viewers are well aware of allows for additional commentary of our times, and is a fertile field for humor. But Jamie isn't just any companion from olden times. He's Jamie, and redefined the action companion. What he brought, besides his fists, was loyalty and friendship, more so than any male companion before, and probably after. Oh, he'd argue, but generally it was good-natured, and except in the most extreme circumstances, like the Doctor's odd behavior in The Evil of the Daleks, he would trust the Doctor. The two were very playful together. This was aided, massively aided, by Fraser Hines and Patrick Troughton's friendship, which they let bleed into the show. Both liked to improvise, not only lines, but behavior. If a script didn't give them what they wanted, they'd find a way. The two decided, amongst themselves, and most certainly not with the agreement of the higher-ups at the BBC, to play the Doctor and Jamie as an old married couple. It's a great dynamic, often funny and quite endearing. And with Jamie, the witty banter that to many of us back in the 70s and 80s was the core of the show was created. Without the Doctor and Jamie, I don't think we'd have had the Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane, or Leela, or Romana. And as previously implied, Jamie perfectly fit with both Victoria and Zoe, making the two best three-person TARDIS teams. Unfortunately, Jamie has the same sad ending as Zoe, without them really noting how terrible it was. I like to ignore that it happened. And that's the Companions of the Second Doctor. A spectacular group for one of the best Doctors. Yeah, I'm a fan. And I'll be back with more Who content.